Hi guys, welcome back. So today we're going to continue. I'm going to keep the name Cool Critters until somebody gives me a better one. And if you haven't heard, I've done one video in this series already. And basically the idea is I'm going to talk to you about an animal that I find interesting and we'll paint it along the way. So you got something fun to watch. And so today, our cool critter, thank you to Hillary, my fiance, for suggesting it, is the puffin. Specifically the Atlantic puffin is what I'm going to be painting, but maybe I'll give you information about the few different species of puffin. But yeah, so I'm gonna get started on that and we'll get right into it. Okay, so let's read some information here. I've got two websites pulled up that I'm gonna be doing most of my info gathering from, and those are the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's website, allaboutbirds.org, and also the Audubon Society's, basically their field guide for different birds. And I pulled up the Atlantic puffin for both of them. So basic description for those of you who are interested in birding and looking for these guys in the wild. You got to live in specific areas, which we'll get into, but there's always a chance. Basic description. As you may or may not know, they look fairly penguin-esque. They're a sharply dressed black and white seabird with a large multicolored bill. Atlantic puffin is often called the clown of the sea. I've never heard anybody call him that, but I suppose it's possible. So they typically spend most of their time at sea. It's a seabird. It's called a pelagic bird, and pelagic means open ocean. And so not like shoreline, we're talking like ocean. So they spend most of their time at sea, and during the months where they breed, they will then come into the shore and they will nest on outcroppings and rocks and things like that, and they'll breed with one another. They have very small wings, so they can fly. Unlike a penguin, they can fly, but they have to beat their wings very fast in order to do so. They're more built for swimming, which we'll kind of get into in a minute here when we talk about how they eat. They're commonly found, like I said, in the ocean. The best time to find them, it says here on the Cornell's website, is during the breeding season from late April through to August. They often come ashore to nest on islands. The rest of the year, they're far out at sea, like I said. In the United States, which is where I'm located, it's best to take a boat trip to Rocky Islands off of Maine, where they're primarily found. Most of the birds, I'm not talking like 50%, I'm talking like 90% of the population of puffins are not United States. They nest in large numbers in Canada, Scotland, Greenland, Norway, especially Iceland, which is home to about half of the global population, which is pretty crazy. Almost 50% of all of the puffins on the earth are in Iceland. So some interesting facts here that I've got on Cornell's website. Puffin chicks are known as pufflings, which is really cute. Like many seabirds, the Atlantic puffin is long-lived, averaging 30 plus years. So a lot of birds live longer than you would expect. But for such a small thing like that, it's pretty interesting that they live up to 30 years. Like other birds with long lifespans, the young take several years to mature. They don't breed until they're 3 to 6 years old. It's the national bird or official bird of Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada. Half of the North American Atlantic puffins breed in the same location. They breed on Witless Bay in Newfoundland, Canada. The oldest recorded Atlantic puffin was a banded chick in Norway, lived to be 41 years old. but it's likely believed that puffins can even live longer than that, but only recently have we developed bands durable enough to last 40 years. So that's pretty cool. The oldest one that they've found was 41, but that's probably because that's as long as the bands will last. So there might even be some older ones, but they just don't know. I'm going to jump over to the Audubon website here. And obviously this is going to say a lot of the same information here. One of the things that I did notice while I was looking this up is if you know puffins, you will know they've got the bright orange beak. However, they don't always have a bright orange beak. That is just something that they have during breeding season. And so it's kind of weird to think, but for most of the year, puffins don't have a beak like that. They actually will shed that bright orange beak off after mating season and have a much smaller, duller beak for most of the year. So the inside of the beak is very serrated. Think of like a steak knife, how it's got those serrations on it. And this is a common trait found in a lot of pelagic birds, but especially puffins, because they eat fish. And fish, in case you're not aware, are very slippery and they don't like to be eaten. And so they can squirm and wiggle out of the beak pretty easily. And so, like most seabirds, puffins have developed serrations on their beak so that they can actually hold on to the fish better. So here on the Audubon website, they've got some sounds that they make. And so I think it's always really cool to learn the different sounds that animals make. And these guys make some strange sounds. So they're a very small bird. If you're unaware, they're about the size of a crow or a robin. So not very big, but they make some interesting sounds. And so I'm going to see if you can hear this. I'm not sure if it'll work, but we're going to go ahead and kind of put the mic closer to the computer, and I'm going to play some of these sounds for you. So they call that a chainsaw snore. That's one of the noises they make. And here's another one. This is called sputtering snores. Isn't that neat? So when these birds do breed, the females lay one egg. Very rarely do they lay two. And if you see a puffin with two eggs, it's probably laid by two different females. But almost always they lay one egg at a time. They say that the egg looks white, sometimes faintly marked with brown and purple. Incubation is done by both sexes, so male and female will sit on the egg from time to time, but the female typically will do more. And incubation takes 36 to 45 days, usually closer to that 40-day range in the middle. When the egg does hatch, both parents will feed the nestlings. They'll grab the fish, like I said, from the water in their bill, and they'll carry it to the baby. They may feed them directly to them at first, but then later they'll drop them off on the floor in the nest. And the young usually take between 38 to 44 days after hatching. So basically, during season, they lay an egg, and then 90 days later, it's a perfectly good, healthy adult, not an adult, but grown enough to leave the nest puffin, which is insane how quickly they grow. But a lot of birds are like that. If you have ever seen a baby duckling, The little tiny fuzzy ones, give them 30 days and they'll be like a monstrosity. It's kind of insane how quickly some of these animals grow. Feeding behavior, like I said, they forage underwater. Typically they eat fish for most of their diet, and they will dive under the water and flap their wings like they're flying in order to swim. They usually do that within 50 feet or so of the surface, but they've been known to dive to up to 200 feet deep underwater, which is crazy. Like I said, mostly fish is their diet. They'll also eat crustaceans from time to time. Things like sand lance or sand eels, herring, capelin or capelin, cod, many others. The diet of adults, especially in the winter, is poorly known because they're not close to the shore. They're way out in the ocean. In addition to fish, it may include crustaceans, such as euphausid shrimp, mysids, and copepods, as well as mollusks and marine worms. So they eat a lot of different things, but all things they forage from the water. So puffins breed in colonies. You can expect during breeding season, if you're in the right area, to see hundreds of thousands of puffins in the same area breeding together. And typically, the birds will have the same mate from year to year. In the courtship process, the male repeatedly flicks his head up and back so the bill points up, and may continue this for minutes. Members of pair swing bills sideways. So they'll smack faces against each other when they're paired together. That's interesting. It's a burrow. So they burrow when they nest. They dig a little hole 3 to 7 feet long or in a natural crevice under a rock. And sometimes one entrance leads to side branches and multiple nests. Both sexes will help excavate. So the nest will be in a chamber in the burrow, and it typically has a sparse lining of grass and feathers. And so now we'll get to the conservation status. The major declines happened during the 19th century, and they were owed to overharvesting of eggs and also adults. They do eat puffins in some areas of the world. During the 20th century, their numbers continued to decrease at the southern end of their breeding range. So kind of think Maine and some of Europe, things like that, where it kind of gets a little closer to the equator, where there's more people. They were dying off, continuing into the 20th century. They're also vulnerable to the introduction of predators such as rats. So they'll run right into those burrows and they'll eat the nestlings or the pufflings. Is that what we decided they're called? The pufflings, or the eggs. So it's very easy to disrupt the natural process. An ambitious Audubon project to reintroduce puffins on former nesting islands off of Maine started in about the 1970s and has been a major success, which is really cool. So I read about this earlier. I'm not sure who was doing it. I don't remember what they said, but I believe the way that it worked was some researchers were taking nestlings or pufflings, as they call them, to this island where they used to be, and they would let them grow up there. And then once they would, grow and fly off, they would then the next year put some decoys in the water by the island or on the island, so that those birds that hatched there and grew up there will actually fly back to the place where they grew up to lay their eggs in the future. And it has made for a boom in the population on some of these islands in the northern side of North America. This does, however, not mean that it's perfect. It says here that some of the southernmost colonies have problems with breeding success during years where the water is particularly warm, which is becoming, unfortunately, much more frequent because of global warming. So I think that's all the information that I'm going to do today about these guys. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit like and the subscribe and ring the bell so that you're notified whenever I post a new video. I'm going to finish up this painting here if I haven't already, and then we'll cut to some of the glamour shots in the outro and we'll get out of here. All right, so here's the finished painting. I'd say that this is pretty successful. I think we got the nice effects here. I hope that you found this video interesting. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell so you're notified whenever I post something new. Share this with your friends if you think they would think it was interesting. Well, let's say the special secret comment word for the day is going to be puffin. Pretty simple, but I think that this was a good one. And if you guys know other animals you'd like me to do, let me know. I think that would be fun to do some viewer suggested animals. Otherwise, I'll keep finding videos or animals to do myself. But hey, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. If you're still here, that's wonderful. We're gonna cut to a couple glamour shots and then we'll get out of here. Subscribe.